Imperial Recruiter was a legendary card for tutoring up infinite combos, but did you know that in the alternate art, the Modern Horizons 2 reprint of the Recruiter, they included two shadowy figures in the background of its art? Those two silhouettes are actually Pestermite and Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, a well-known infinite creature combo that Imperial Recruiter slots quite nicely into, which is just an awesome nod to one of the many ways this card is going to be played. Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello, welcome back to Basics, episode 15, a show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. Starting things off, we've got a very tough one. It's Ikra Shidiki, the Usurper, and Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. Now, for partner pairings, it's easy to run into trouble finding a unique common ground that matches both with just one land pairing. So you need to get creative by diving into the subject matter of the pair and trying to link up synergy from there. So the thing that I noticed between the two is that there was a zombie in each of them, Kraum's form, and the zombie holding a tray of fruit for Ikra Shidiki. So I realized you could use the Dracula Secret Lair lands that each have Dracula or one of his minions in them, standing menacingly, and it would look pretty cool when lined up together, like an army of unhallowed beings. However, if you wanted to try to match colors, then I came up with two that might be usable. I followed the deep azure blue hues that were in their artworks, and I came up with this pairing from all across MTG history. This mountain illustrated by Richard Wright from Kaladesh, this swamp illustrated by Andreas Rocha from Jumpstart, this forest from Theros Beyond Death illustrated by Sam Burley, and then topped off with this island from Innistrad Crimson Vow, illustrated by Sam White. I feel like these all capture that deep blue essence that is reflected in the background of both the partner pairs, and while their subject matter may not match exactly, I feel like all of them combined together creates a decently fitting overall motif. However, I have one more to bring to the table that I think you might enjoy. Because Ikra and Kraum don't have similar art styles, I was drawn to more complex imagery from Streets of New Capenna to give the sense of the opulence that is in Ikra's artwork alongside the complexity of the image from Kraum. So take a look at this island illustrated by Matteo Bassini, this swamp also illustrated by Matteo Bassini, and this mountain illustrated by Zbigniew M. Bilak, and this gorgeous forest illustrated by W. Fleming Illustration. These three have a complexity of color palette, deepness of color, and an awesome overall styling that I felt was worth mentioning. Next on the list, we have Admiral Beckett Brass. Shout out to my buddy Noah for helping me out with this one. Admiral Beckett Brass is likely considered to be the pirate tribal commander, even though there are plenty of legendary pirates. But her bright and cheery atmosphere, along with her play pattern of literally pirating her opponent's permanents, gives her a unique flavor that is really enjoyable to see in game. So when looking for basics for this first pairing, I wanted to look for as many naval references as I could, starting with this island from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, illustrated by Titus Lunter, that proudly displays a 1700s sailing ship in the midground, this swamp from Adventures of the Forgotten Realms that shows a bleak dock in the middle of night with a ship silhouetted in the background, and this mountain from Avacyn Restored, which shows a lighthouse bordering the edge of the sea. I love the thematic tie-ins in this pairing, especially the mountain, because mountains rarely display water for fear of looking too much like an island or a swamp. For this second pairing, I wanted to show off some old bordered cards, while also giving the feeling that you are actually on an expedition on the water. So take a look at this swamp from Mirage, illustrated by Bob Eggleton, this island from Portal Second Age, illustrated by John Avon, that also displays a ship in its artwork, and this mountain, illustrated by Kim Jun, that feels like you are on a river approaching Treasure Island. I love these lands, because they all have the level of brightness and color saturation that Beckett Brass shows off in her artwork, while also focusing on the potential locations a pirate would go on a naval expedition. For this final set, I wanted to show off some additional potential lands you could choose for her, starting with this mountain from Commander Legends, illustrated by Elena Danner, and this awesome ship-based island from Jumpstart, illustrated by Titus Lunter, and this swamp from Magic Origins, illustrated by Larry Elmore. This pairing focuses on matching the blue colors in the sky behind Beckett Brass, while also having modern borders for those people who prefer them. Up in third today we have Belby, Corrupted Observer, An interesting thing about Belby is that her artwork doesn't appear to have much of a backdrop. She is standing in front of a wall that just appears to be an ethereal swirl when taken at a glance. However, the thing that I was spooked by was a subtle implication of her more vicious nature by showing Phyrexian oil dripping out of a cut in the wall. So I chose lands that show a post-apocalyptic Phyrexian-infused world that would also match the greens, yellows, and blacks in her artwork. So take a look at this swamp from the Magic Premier Shop promos illustrated by Puddinhead, and this intense forest illustrated by John Avon, also from the Magic Premier Shop promos, and only available in Japanese. I feel like these capture the color styling, intense worldview, and overall post-apocalyptic motif that Belby implies in her artwork. For a more budget option, let's take a look at this swamp illustrated by Craig Mullins from Time Spiral, and this forest illustrated by Rob Alexander, also from Time Spiral. I really liked this pairing because of how grotesque and intense the world is, all while standing in contrast to Belby's clean appearance, standing with pride over what she has created. Fourth on the list, we've got Korvold, Fey Cursed King, a very well-known commander. Korvold's base motif is that of royalty, and his stark and intense appearance while sitting in the halls of a grand throne room is a paradoxical juxtaposition. So the artist combined the appearances of both by giving a pale greenish gold wash over all the imagery. So keeping all of these things in mind, I wanted to convey urban atmospheres, like buildings and castles, while also focusing on that pale green color that Korvold displays. Take a look at this mountain from Commander 2019, illustrated by Richard Wright, this swamp from Jumpstart, illustrated by Titus Lunter, and this forest from Return to Ravnica, illustrated by Richard Wright as well. The bleak urban atmosphere, combined with the greens and the gold, make this pairing feel like quite a natural fit with Korvold. Following along that same line of thinking, I went with this swamp from Khans of Tarkir, illustrated by Sam Burley, and this mountain illustrated by Noah Bradley from Magic Origins, and this forest illustrated by Yang Hao Han from Return to Ravnica. The thing I liked most about this pairing is the forest, which feels shrouded and inaccessible even though the scenery isn't necessarily dark or imposing. And finally, we've got a 4-color commander. It's Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder from Commander 2016. Yidris' art is almost pearlescent, with the bright abstract form in the foreground and the out-of-focus swirling background causing the scene to dance in step with its motion. So naturally I was drawn to lands that had extraordinarily powerful motion lines to match, and the more abstracted the form, the better. So take a look at this island from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, illustrated by Adam Paquette, this swamp from Unsanctioned, illustrated also by Adam Paquette, this forest illustrated by Véronique Magnod, and this mountain from Zendikar Rising, illustrated by Sam Burley. I ended up favoring the full art lands for this pairing, with exception to the island. However, the island art matched up well, while also literally talking about a maelstrom in its flavor text, so I felt it was worth mentioning. If you wanted to make all the borders match up, then there was a plethora of awesome full art lands to choose from that convey the movement and intensity of Yidris in his artwork. So take a look at this mountain from Double Masters, illustrated by Noah Bradley, this forest also from Double Masters, illustrated by Noah Bradley, this gorgeous swamp from Battle for Zendikar, also illustrated by Noah Bradley, and this island illustrated by Tianhua X from Battle for Zendikar. I think this combination is elegant, with the abstracted elements showing the color and energy of their respective land types through an impressionistic lens, not necessarily a fully rendered one. But there you have it. 5 more commanders, sorted for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try and pick up basic lands for. Comment below and let me know, and have a great day.